It's that time again. It's time to kick back and relax and take a break from the woke news. The woke news will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m., but today is Doctor Who Sunday. We're not looking at the new series that can just wait for a little while. We're talking about Classic Who. Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It, with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, switch on the notification bell so that you know I am releasing another video. Thanks to everyone who has joined me already. I cannot run this channel without you. We are on our way to 2K subscribers. Can we do it? We are continuing on with our review of The Trial of a Time Lord, which was voted by you, the subscriber. To vote on the current poll, please head on over to the post page, as it's now called, where you can find it. I upload a new poll every Saturday at 10 a.m. Today we are looking at parts 5 through to 8 of A Trial of a Time Lord. These 4 parts are known to the viewer as Mind Warp. Mind Warp was written by Philip Martin. It was directed by Ron Jones. It aired from the 4th of October 1986 to the 25th of October 1986. It aired to 5.08 million people on average. Please be sure to leave a comment below as to what you think of the story. Mind Warp. As usual, I am bound to miss something out. The Doctor has been accused of meddling and his life is at stake. The Valeyard presents his next set of evidence in the form of Mind Warp. The Doctor and Peri land on Thoris Beta. Whilst there, they meet a scientist named Crozier, who is developing and conducting experiments to prolong life on Keeve, who has a life-threatening condition. He needs a brain transplant of some description in order to save his life because his brain is getting too big for his head. These experiments that are being performed by Crozier are at the risk of other people's lives, in particular the one warlord king, Yucanus. The Doctor and Peri escape with him and they plan to make an attack on Syl. However, the Doctor abandons them, or so it appears, at the last minute to warn the Mentors. This results in the Doctor questioning and interrogating Peri. However, the Doctor does tell her that this was his plan so that he could find out what was going on. In Syl's mind, this does result in Crozier trying to transplant Keeve into another specimen's body. None of this, of course, goes according to plan, and chaos ensues. As Peri is strapped down and prepared for an operation, Crozier is going to transplant Keeve's mind into her head. The Doctor is on his way to save Peri when he is suddenly hypnotically drawn into the TARDIS and taken to the trial. The Doctor is blaming the Time Lords for what has happened to Peri, but the Valeyard argued that it is the Doctor's fault in the first place that we see that Peri has ended up in this situation. We believe that Peri is dead at the hands of the Time Lords after we see this. The King was wildly firing and he ends up causing Peri's demise. The Doctor, he is devastated and he insists that there has to be an ulterior motive. This story has a lot of good points. It also has a lot of bad points. Is it the weakest of the 4? I don't think so. I think it's probably the second strongest of the 4, the strongest being the first one. Do you think the story is also convoluted? The reason why I ask that is because I remember when I first watched it, I had to watch it a couple of times through to fully understand what was going on. There was a lot of getting captured and running away in this one, and I think there is too much of a backstory, even though I know it's playing into the character of Syl and him wanting the weapons. I just don't think that backstory was needed as much. It offered a lot of padding. All these meetings with the Mentors and all of that, I think were fine, but it's just better to have him lusting after Peri and trying to focus on his Lord Keeve. It is creepy in his demeanour, and trying to ensure that his Master Keeve staying alive is most paramount to his character in this story. I really didn't think they needed to add anything else. I think it made it a little bit complicated. But what do we all think of the character of Syl? I personally don't mind him. I don't think he really needed to return. The only thing I don't like about his character is the voice modulation. Never like that. Never. I like the idea that Syl does have technology to do a mind transference on his master, and I find that interesting that he could potentially alter how minds think. So maybe it was a good idea to bring him back, because I suppose with the series in such a massive jeopardy, it made sense for them to bring in a familiar face, right? This is clearly something for this series that they think they seem to have needed. One of the things that happens throughout most constantly, the entire story arc has a lot of what I would call stunt casting. So for example, in the previous one, we had Joan Sims. In this one, although I'm not entirely sure how famous he was at the time, we had Christopher Ryan, who played Keeve. I think maybe it was The Young Ones he was known for at the time. And then in the next story, we have Honor Blackman. And in a later story, we see the return of the Master. Plus, we also have Linda Bellingham in the trial scenes, and we also have Michael Jaston. Much like today, clearly back then, we were getting what I would call injected stunt casting. However, back then, it was all done with actors. I will also say that most of these actors who came in are pretty well-known actors. Probably also, these actors wanted to do Doctor Who because no matter how bad the story is, that's an honourable credit to your name. Like, even now it is. One of our other well-known actors in this is Brian Blessed. Oh boy. Brian Blessed, one of my most common notes throughout this entire story is Brian Blessed is so loud. He is, naturally, of course, very well cast as the king. He is loud, he is boisterous, the character, that is, and I think it was a very easy casting decision and a casting choice perhaps for Brian. Yes, he was incredibly loud. I think that Brian is very much suited to the stage because of his loudness. He is a very broad man, so naturally he can project. Naturally, he's one of those actors that doesn't always try to make it smaller for the screen. His performance, though, in this is varied throughout. And yes, it's varied in volume performance as well, but there are times where it's just too loud and the microphone picks up way too much. I think it's part 7, which is the weakest story part. He is very loud, and there's a bit where he shouts and there's an echo and the mic picks that up and it made it even worse. What I do like, though, is that the script takes advantage of that fact and they make a point of saying that he is very loud. So it was all in good jest. Paul Bowler, 5345 says, Marsh Minnows, probably best sums up Mind Warp, squishy, icky, but oddly watchable, if only for Brian Blessed, being wonderfully OTT in every scene. Brian Blessed, if you are looking for a character that needs to be loud without barely even trying, then Brian is your man for that. He's a great actor and he did suit this role extremely well. He's got some of the best bits in it. For example, in part 5, he briefly wakes up and calls Crozier scum and then falls back to sleep in his experiment. I find that really funny. Makes me laugh just talking about it. I also like the fact that when he wakes up, he goes stark raving bonkers and destroys the laboratory. And he saves the Doctor. He also has a wonderful scene with Perry. It's a bit of a soapy moment, I would say, but it is a nice scene where she's showing that she is homesick. And he does a really good job in playing that scene and cheering her up for the best that he could do. So I do like that scene. And speaking of Perry, this is Perry's last story. It's a bit shocking that it is her last story, but I think that is because she joined towards the end of the Peter Davison era, and then there was also an 18-month hiatus where she would have been working on the show. I think we would have seen her a bit longer on our screens had they not cancelled the show or put it into a temporary hiatus. But she's really good in the trial of a Time Lord. She's grown the character up a lot. She's not as whiny. They've certainly dressed her down a lot more in this than what they did in her first stories. The bit where she's explaining the planet Earth to the king, oh, you'd like it there. Lots of madmen playing at warriors and actors playing over the top in politics. That's what she said, and that statement, even though it was integrated into the plot naturally because it fitted, the story and who she was talking to, it made me think of actors in today's world. Talking about politics, it was a very well delivered speech from Peri. Nicola Bryant does a fantastic job. She really has come into the character of Peri by this point. I like it when she saves the Doctor in part 7, although I do say that the Doctor should be prioritising saving her, but in this case, I'll give it to her because it just couldn't be helped. They needed to do that in order to move the plot along. Her ending, though, so her ending with Lord Keeve's mind getting transplanted into hers, I love that. Who else thought that she was really dead? I certainly did. I'm lucky because I get to watch it straight through and find out, well, that she wasn't dead. But people back then would have had to have waited to find out. It is quite a sad circumstances, though. The Time Lords used the king as an assassin. They caught him in a time bubble. And by doing that, that obviously resulted in Peri's demise. And it would prevent Crozier's experiments as well from changing time. Although, I will say this, at the end of the trial of a Time Lord, we find out that Peri's actual ending is her marrying the king and not dying. So I would say then, surely, Crozier's experiments would have come into fruition. I don't think they should have walked that back. Peri should have stayed dead. Ian Buckley, 2347, agrees. A story I only remember for the shocking ending that the production team unfortunately walked back later. Seal is great, but everything else is meh. Granted, though I can tell she really enjoyed doing something different. Very different. I think the companions do enjoy that when they get to do something different and not ask constant questions or be captured. She does get captured in this. She even has to undergo a fake interrogation, which I know she wasn't too keen on filming in real life, but she had to sell it. And who else thought that the Doctor had betrayed Peri? I liked that because it gave Colin a little something different to do. And because his Doctor's more abrupt and more sarcastic, you believe that he's actually portrayed them. It's almost faith destroying in this Doctor. However, that does not happen. Brian Blessed, now that I think about it, said something about Colin not being sure as to where he wanted to take his Doctor. He also does acknowledge that Colin was dealing with a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. I've got that from information from, I think it was 30 Years in the TARDIS or something like that. It was definitely a documentary I got that from. Now, I'm inclined to disagree. I think he knew exactly what he wanted to do. However, in this story, his Doctor is all over the place with the writing. It has both good and bad points in this story, and I'm always full of praise for Colin, nearly all the time. There's one thing, though, that I didn't like, and that was his brains being addled. It was very bizarre. It made sense, I guess, in the story, and I'm sure that Colin had a lot of fun doing that, but it didn't convince me entirely. This could be because of lack of time and the external factors that are going on around him at the time. It could also be lack of direction. It's not necessarily his fault. That's the only thing, though. He does save Peri from Dorf. He also saves her from the Rack, even though they tried to pin the Rack dying on them. Colin delivers a fine performance when telling them that the CD phaser had gone off accidentally. Do you think that his doctor behaves like the Doctor in this? I've mentioned that he does save Perry, but he also does a double cross, even though it's not a true double cross. But then there's also a bit that I'm not too keen on, and this is to do with the writing, not with Colin, and that's the skedaddle test. And they do that in order to escape. I wasn't too keen on that. However, there is no sonic screwdriver with this incarnation of the Doctor, and there never will be. So that leaves the writer with more room to be creative. It's not the best thing to come up with, but it's better than the sonic screwdriver for sure. I feel very bad for the Doctor though, because the Time Lords intervened when he was trying to save her. And because they did that, he was not able to do the one thing that he really wanted to do, and that was ensure her safety. And I have reason to believe that he would have saved her. They showed that he had not betrayed her, and that he was thinking of her before he was taken out of time. The Doctor's devastation at that moment was a brilliant cliffhanger. I'm not too keen on the courtroom cliffhangers. However, this one was definitely one that was well within reason to do so. His "You killed Perry" line was sublime. The Great Bert 9005 says, "You killed Perry." Colin's delivery of that line, angry, accusative, and forlorn. It finishes with him saying that he was essentially taken out of time for a reason, and he has every intention of finding out what that reason was. It was a sad cliffhanger, and I think I will say that for this story, these are better than the first 4 parts cliffhanger wise for this story. So at the end of part 7, we believe that Perry and the king have been zapped to their demise, and at the end of part 6 you can hear the King Yrcanus saying to the Doctor, "Now it's your turn to die," which is very intriguing because we don't really know what the king is capable of at that point. We can only guess, having seen what he did to the laboratory. And I think my favourite cliffhanger though was at the end of part 5, and that was when the Doctor was being put on the bench to have the truth extracted from his brain. Genius, I honestly think. There are some other great points, just to mention quickly, very quickly. The operation scene on Kiev is pretty good. I find it intriguing that the Doctor did go ahead and help them with this operation. It shows in many respects that he is thinking about mortality, and that it's very different to the aspects of a human. I think Christopher Ryan is a very nice addition to Doctor Who too, and you can tell it's him because of his voice. I also found it really funny, and I think it was when Keeve, Christopher Ryan, wakes up, he thinks that he's dead because he sees Syl and he just goes, "Whoa," and reacts. And I think it works so well because Christopher Ryan obviously has a knack for comedy, having starred in many comedies over the years. It made me chuckle. I just also want to take a moment to say, just imagine a diverse cast with no singing, no dancing about it. What I mean by no singing and dancing is not jazz hands and belting out a few musical numbers that we've had since the last series. What I'm saying is we have actors from different cultures in this story, and we have Nabil Shaban, who has brittle bone disease but is seen as a major pioneer for disability arts, and there's no song and dance about it. These performers are there doing their job, being cast extremely well in their roles, and they are loving it. It's very clear that they enjoy what they do. And how regal does the Inquisitor sound by being called Sagacity? I just thought that I would add that in there because I have some issues now that I would like to address, and it's not to do with the Inquisitor, but I thought it was a good segue. We're going back to calling the Valeyard names. Oh yes. One of the first names we get is Brickyard. I'm not too keen on that. It's a sign of you're losing the argument. Could that have been the sign of Doctor Who losing its way back then? There's still too many cutaways also to the courtroom. However, the costumes look good. The staging for the looks, it looks good. The makeup for Dorf, Kiev, and Sil looks fantastic. I think they could have done with some more money for this. However, I think that a lot of money did go on the special effects. I really did believe that because I love the opening shot of the space station. I like the fact that this is a recurring theme that keeps coming back through the entire story arc. I think JNT committed to that very well. Unfortunately, that does mean that some bits appear to have been neglected. I love the 80s colouring in the opening shots. It's very luminous. It's very fitting for the time. I don't know if it was too much. It's quite a strong colouring. And if they ever return to Thoris Beta, they would have to do that look all over again. And, well, to look at that for a long time, it's very strong on the eyes, but I do like it. And I especially love it when the TARDIS lands in front and you've got the background of Saturn behind it. It's almost like they were trying to push the boundaries of the CSO, colour separation overlay. So overall, this is an okay story. It's not my favourite one of the bunch. I'd give it 6 out of 10 maybe. Let me know what you think. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, switch on the notification bell so that you know I am releasing another video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow at 4 PM. Bye bye.